Hallo zusammen, I'm your vlog Dave. Every once in a while a language changes certain rules and words, whether it's regarding the orthography, meaning the way we spell words, punctuation rules or even grammatical things. And while there are many different, rather colloquial changes in the way people use the German language and express themselves in everyday German, this is still different to official changes, which I'm talking about today. Let's answer the question that's been raised in the video's title. Is there a new German letter now? What happened? Well, to keep it short, yes and no at the same time, pretty much. But before I'm gonna elaborate on that, here's something you should know about how the German language keeps being subject to change from an official side of things. Ever heard of the Rat für Deutsche Rechtschreibung? This assembly consists of several different people, mostly linguists from some German-speaking countries and regions, including, well, obviously Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Belgium and Liechtenstein. So what these people do is basically trying to adjust and change aspects of the German language whenever they think it's an improvement to the previous rules or even a linguistic necessity in a way. These more or less brand new changes are mainly based on the last few changes back in 2006, which themselves have been adjustments and changes based on the last basic change of the linguistic German rules back in 1996. 21 years ago, yeah. Holy moly. So today, on June 29th, the Rat für Deutsche Rechtschreibung, meaning this assembly, published a Pressemitteilung, a press release, in which they sum up and mention some of the recent changes. Alright Dave, so please get to it now. Is there a new German letter? No, not really, but in a way there is, if you count the spelling of an already existing letter as well. I'm talking about the famous SZ, also known as the sharp S, das scharfe S. It's this letter right here, which written form somewhat reminds of a capitalized B, and the term capital is the key word here as well. So far, you couldn't really spell the SZ as a capital letter. It wasn't possible. It pretty much only existed as a small letter until now, so yes, in the realm of capitalized letters, there is a new letter. Whenever you had a term that included an SZ and which you were supposed to spell in capital letters only, you had to change the SZ to a double S. For instance, imagine a comic strip, and one of the characters is really angry and they say Scheiße, but it's spelled in capital letters in order to enhance the amount of anger and to express that even more so. As you might know, the adjective Scheiße, shit, is spelled with an SZ. So now you could also spell it like this. You don't have to use a double S in case you're supposed or want to spell a German word that contains an SZ in capital letters. You could simply use the new large SZ, das große Eszett. It's basically a chubby SZ that once again reminds of a capitalized B. Now, some of you who are pretty familiar with the German language and German words might think, okay, so why? I mean, why was this a necessary change? Because I know that the SZ can't be the initial letter in a German word anyway, let alone in a German noun, which needs to be spelled with a capital letter all the time. So, what's the point? In many official German papers, but especially in passes and ID cards for instance, you're supposed to spell your name in capital letters. Some German last names also contain an SZ, for instance Meissner. Usually this name needed to be spelled Meissner with a double S in this context, but the problem is that you can also find the last name Meissner with a double S instead of an SZ. So, as you can see, there is a huge potential for confusing people and wrong information, just because you couldn't spell a capitalized SZ and you needed to rely on an alternative capital spelling with two S instead. By applying this new change, a situation like this shouldn't be happening anymore. Next to this change, the assembly also decided on some other orthographic changes, meaning changes spelling-wise. One of these changes also relates to the spelling of recurring and therefore more or less fixed combinations of an adjective and a noun. This context is also a good example of how the assembly also tries to analyze and interpret linguistic changes that haven't been official yet, but that are used and considered normal by more and more Germans as time goes by. Actually, many Germans have developed a tendency towards spelling a specific adjective that's closely linked to a specific noun with a capital letter. A good example would be a recurring combination, such as der technische Assistent, the technical assistant, which refers to an occupation in this case. While you'd normally spell the inflected adjective technische in small letters, the tendency towards spelling it der technische Assistent has increased significantly. I reckon a reason for this is the aforementioned pretty fixed and recurring combination of these particular terms, and since an occupation, der Beruf, such as der Lehrer, the teacher, or der Verkäufer, the shop assistant, is a noun, many Germans just adopted this for the adjective that's related to the noun as well. So now you can use both spellings, der technische Assistent and der technische Assistent, for combinations that tend to be used both ways by many people. This isn't limited to occupations though. A combination like die goldene Hochzeit, the golden marriage, meaning 50 years of being married, can also be spelled with an adjective's first letter being capitalized. In the press release, the assembly refers to those combinations as Fälle mit schwankendem Gebrauch, which is a pretty interesting way to put it. It means scenarios with unsteady or fluctuating usage. But be careful, because this doesn't mean that this applies to all adjectives and all combinations of an adjective and a noun. Metaphorically or literally motivated combinations such as der freie Mitarbeiter, the freelance collaborator, still needs to be spelled with small letters, while special forms of address such as der heilige Vater, the holy father, requires a capital letter for the adjective. Apart from that, some previously possible alternative spellings of loanwords from other languages have been erased as well. Now it's no longer possible to spell ketchup instead of ketchup, and for instance, it's neither an option to spell mayonnaise instead of mayonnaise now. And although the assembly acknowledges ordinary people changing the way a language works and how they use it to some degree, the assembly doesn't change everything just because something has become a custom or a common way in regard to how people use a language in non-official ways. A good example is herzlich willkommen, which, by the way, just translates to welcome in English. Many Germans also like to spell this herzlich willkommen, but even though this is also a common tendency, the assembly still only allows to use the first spelling, since willkommen is used like an adjective here. So these are just a few examples of new changes. You can find both the new orthographical and the rather grammatical changes on www.rechtschreibrat.com. Find a clickable link to that in the video description as well. And if you enjoyed this video and you actually learned something, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with other people, learning groups you might be part of, etc., since all that really helps the channel a lot. In case you're interested in supporting this channel, check out my Patreon page or my PayPal page for instance. Anyway, thanks for watching, I'm your Vlog Dave, tschüss und bis zum nächsten Mal.